Welcome to Algebra, Chapter 2, Section 5, Literal Equations and Formulas. In my experience, literal equations are a bit confusing to students, but all they are is an equation involving two or more variables. And you solve them like you solve any other equation. You go ahead and use the 5 steps we talked about in the last video. This is number 2 in your notes. The first one you just need to watch. The second one you will put in your notes. We are going to solve each equation in terms of the given variable. So we are going to solve this equation in terms of a. So we're going to isolate the a. Well, if you look at this, it's fairly easy to do. This is 3 times a. 3 times a multiplied by 1/3 or divide by 3. What I do to one side, I must do to the other. The 3's cancel. So a equals 9/3. So a equals 3. The second equation is the one you're going to write in your notes. AD equals F. Again, we're isolating the A. So what is next to the A? It's D. And what is D doing to the A? It's multiplying. So to undo that, we divide. What you do to one side, you must do to the other. So A equals F over D. In both cases, I isolated the variable that I was asked to isolate. I did it a little differently. On this side, I multiplied by the reciprocal, and on this side, I divided. But remember, dividing is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. So the process was the same, it just looked a little different. On the left, you have an actual answer. You have 3. On the right, because the entire equation was made up of variables, you have a variable answer. And that's sometimes okay. Here are 2 more equations. We are again going to solve each in terms of the given variable. You only have to write the one marked number 3 down in your notes, but pay attention to both of them as we solve them. The first equation is 7 plus 2n equals 11. And as you can see here, the n is what I'm isolating. So going through my steps, I look at distributive property, I look for similar terms, I get all the variables on one side. In this case, the variable we're looking for is n. And then the next step is I add and subtract, undo those terms. So I have a positive 7, so I'm going to subtract 7. Because of course, 7 minus 7 is 0. So 2n equals 4. Now I undo the multiplication division. So I'm going to undo this multiplication by dividing by 2. So n equals 2. Let's look at the other one. This one needs to be in your notes. Again, I am going to isolate the n. That's a given variable. I again go through the steps. There's no distributive property. There's no combining like terms. I don't need to move anything from one side to the other. And I'm to undo addition subtraction. So I need to undo this m. And what I do to one side, I must do to the other. And I undid the m because that's what needs to move. The n is staying. That's what I'm isolating. M minus m is 0. So 2n equals p minus m. I divide both sides by 2. N equals p minus m over 2. Again, 2 very similar problems. One has numbers, one is all variables. You need to write the number 4. You need to write the one marked number 4 down in your notes, but we will do both of them here, so watch carefully. The first one is 10 minus 5 times 3 plus b, and our goal is to solve for b. So my goal is to get b alone. I followed through my steps. First step is distribute. So I have 10 equals 15 plus 5b. Combine like terms. Get the variables all on one side. And then I need to undo my addition subtraction. So I'm going to undo my addition. These canceled. And then I need to undo my multiplication division. So I'm going to divide by 5. Divide by 5, so -1 equals b. Looks very straightforward when it's all numbers. For number 4, what you're writing in your notes, we're going to do the same type of steps, but they're all variables. Just keep in mind our goal is to solve for this variable b1. So I have a equals 1/2 h times b1 plus b2. And I'm going to take the 1/2 h and distribute it through. So I have a equals 1/2 h HB1 plus 1/2 HB2, because I distributed that through. My goal is to get the B1 by itself, so I'm going to subtract this to get rid of that. What I do to one side, I must do to the other. It's a 2. So I have A minus 1/2 HB2 equals 1/2 HB1. Change my color here so you can see a little better. And I'm getting B1 by itself, so I'm going to divide both sides by 1/2 h. What ends up is that we isolate the B1, doing a lot of canceling, and come up with B1 equals 2a over h minus b sub 2. I have two definitions here. We have the function form. An equation is in function form if one of the variables is isolated on one side of the equation. That's a function form when one variable is isolated. The second definition, output, input. Okay, that's really two definitions, but I combine them. The isolated variable is the output and is a function of the input. So it's related to this function form. Here's my example. P equals 4s. That means P is a function of s. So this P is the output and s is the input. Example, we want to rewrite this equation so that y is a function of x. So we want to isolate the y. To do that, we're going to first subtract 2x from both sides. These will cancel. So I have negative 6y equals negative 2x plus 37. And then I'm going to divide both sides by negative 6. So I need to undo that multiplication. So these cancel. And I'm left with y equals negative 2x over 6, negative 6. And then I have plus 37 over negative 6. Now that could be simplified a bit, I don't know, to show us that y equals negative divided by negative is positive, 2 divided by 6 is 1/3 x, positive and negative make a negative, and then this is 6 and 1, 6. Here are a list of formulas. I believe most of these are in your agenda, so you do not need to write these down, but we're going to be using one of them, the area of a rectangle, on the next slide. This is the last example. In this one, we want to know what is the length of a rectangle. Since we're asked for the length, we're going to isolate the L, and then we're going to use the information we're given to solve the equation. Looking at our problem here, to isolate the L, we need to get rid of the W, and the W is being multiplied by the L. So to undo multiplication, we're going to divide. So we're going to have L equals A over W. Now using that piece of information, we're going to see that W is 10 and A is 45. So L equals 45 over 10. And of course, being mathematically minded, we can reduce that a little bit and say 4 and 5/10, which is 4 and 1/2 is the value of L. Now don't forget that we need to label this. So our final answer would be 4.5 inches. This is the lesson check for this note page. Please take a moment and do problems 8 and 9 in your notes. Just to test yourself to see if you know what's going on. And then one more slide. Please take a moment and make sure you understand what a literal equation is. and what a formula is, and take a quick check of your understanding of rewriting literal equations. And I'll see you in class tomorrow.